Good morning and happy Saturday to everyone. Welcome to the show, K and K, Kandid Konversations with K and K. We're so happy to have you all here with us this morning, or if you're going to listen later on, which a lot of people have been doing. People are busy on Saturday mornings, and we understand that shopping and whatnot. So we really want to thank those people that tune into our Facebook and YouTube pages later on. Good morning. Hey, Renee, how are you?
Good morning, Kim. Sister Girl Speaks. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Excited about today's show. Um,
Absolutely.
we want to give several shout outs today. This has been a very interesting week for those of you who, like me, are into politics and keep CNN on 24/7. But I want to give some really positive shout outs this morning. The first thing I want to do is shout out to the young ladies, women who testified before Congress about their own issues or issues with abortion, who had abortions. I specifically want to shout out Cori Bush, the representative from Missouri, who was raped at 16 and decided to have an abortion. And then I want to give a shout out to Barbara Lee, especially. Barbara Lee, I believe, was 16 years old. She was raped. Now, she wasn't raped. She got pregnant and lived in California, and her mother sent her to Texas to have a back alley abortion. Those abortions that we heard about before Roe versus Wade was enforced, or was passed, was done by the Supreme Court. Kay, I had never heard. I've always heard about back alley abortions, seen it in movies, but I never, and I met Barbara Lee, Congressman Barbara Lee, several times, but I never knew someone that actually had it. And that made it really real to me. I don't know if you saw her. Were you able to see her testimony?
No, I did not. And just by hearing what you've described, you hear about it through our nanas, right? Even our mothers speak on this. But to know someone, to actually hear a testimony of that nature, it sends chills down my spine. Because one
Right.
thing about it, men don't know what women have to go through when a traumatic experience like that happens. They will never understand. I don't care what any man says. Unless you actually go through that process, you don't know. You cannot walk in that person's shoes. So I give kudos to Congresswoman Barbara Lee for speaking her truth, because that takes courage.
I think people don't understand that when someone wants to have an abortion, they will do, she risked her life
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And that shows you how desperate some people are. And so that is why it is very important to make sure that this procedure, which is a personal decision, is allowed to do safely under under the guise of a doctor.
Right.
It's very important for that. We can't have women in back alleys anymore. We can't
No.
do that. And that's what's going to happen. The Supreme Court has a new session coming up. I believe they open in a couple of weeks. We send our thoughts and prayers to Brett Kavanaugh, Justice
Mm-hmm.
Kavanaugh, who has COVID.
Yes.
And so they don't know how they're going to do that right now, but I'm sure they'll work that out. The second shout out I want to give today is for the women who are marching today, primarily in Washington, D.C., but really all over the country, for reproductive rights. I will not be able to attend. I believe they'll be at the Capitol here in Oklahoma. I will not be able to attend because I'm at a workshop today. But, that's what this democracy is about. This is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we consistently have to call, email, march, so that our representatives know what this country wants. Most of the country is behind safe and secure abortion. So, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No. I always call you my political diva, and there's a reason for that.
It's a
And
sickness.
no, it's not. See,
Yes.
I'm gonna talk about my nugget later, and so when I say this nugget, you're gonna be like, Karen, I'm sorry, I apologize. Okay,
Okay.
but
Well, you know what? let's bring in our guest. I am excited to have her
Please
here.
introduce her. Yes.
Yes, she is. We went to Homewood Flossmoor together. Shout out to the Vikings. She was a year older than me, although she does look younger. And we were on speech team together. And Kim was the pinnacle of success to me. Kim Hirschman, I'm going to introduce her and bring her on. And give her introduction. As you all see her beautiful face, she is calling in from California. Kim Hirschman has been an executive in the entertainment industry for more than 25 years. And currently, Ms. Hirschman is the president of Claytown Productions, a production company that nurtures and supports diverse talent. As a business affairs consultant for more than 8 years, Ms. Hirschman's clients included major studio networks and production companies, as well as high-profile producers, actors, executives, and athletes. Prior to her work as an independent consultant, Ms. Hirschman worked in the legal and business affairs and creative executive at studios to include HBO, Showtime, ABC, and NBC. However, the work Ms. Hirschman is most proud of advocating, and this is really great, for those who don't have the voice or means or platform to advocate for themselves. More recently, Ms. Hirschman championed the cause of an unhoused Yale alum and his spouse. This effort has led her to recommend policy changes that are being implemented by the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, the mayor of Los Angeles City Council members, city supervisors, and the city attorney. As a result of these efforts, Ms. Hirschman was recognized by KTLA 5 as Black History Month Visionary. Currently, Ms. Hirschman is producing a documentary that she hopes will humanize the homeless population and raise awareness. What the call is, she's saying, if not us, then who? Ms. Hirschman is a cum laude graduate of Yale University, and a graduate of Yale Law School, and the mother of 2. Welcome to Kim Hirschman.
Thank you. Hello. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
So wonderful. Like, we shouldn't even say how many years it's been since we've seen each other. So wonderful to see you. And Kay, Renee, very lovely to meet you. So thank you, ladies, for having me.
You know, Kim, I didn't plan this, but I have to say this. Could you give a brief synopsis of what happened with the Yale, how you found out about it? Because I heard about it the same time you did. I think it was on CNN. And then what you did, if you could give us a synopsis of that, because that's a really great story.
Well, I had the day the CNN story aired, I was frankly asleep, and I started getting pings on my phone from people on the East Coast who'd gone to Yale, reaching out to me because I've been very involved with the Black alumni at Yale, Black, the House current, students, organizations, etc. Since actually graduating from Yale. So I got all of these messages. And then I looked on my phone and started reading and just cried. And I reached out to what is the Yale Black Alumni Network, really saying to them, does anyone know this person? I didn't know him, but I knew he was in Los Angeles area, and I live, right outside of Los Angeles. And I was like, this person's going to need medical and, mental health and addiction and housing and a job. And let's step in, because literally I said, there but for the grace of God go so many of us.
Yes.
And then, we started a conversation back and forth. And I also put the information on the Yale Broad alumni page, really sharing what was going on. And I learned through that group, someone realized that Sean's, his name is Sean Pleasance, his younger brother, 5 years younger, had gone to Yale. So he then popped up in the group, and I said, where is he? And he told me where he had seen him last, but he hadn't heard from him and had not been able to get in touch with him, for years. And then I reached out to a friend of mine, and I said, I want to go, and I have a meeting in the morning, but can you meet me and pick me up and, drive me? And I said to my then significant other, I want to go. So I need you 2 men to come with me because I'm going to a homeless encampment. And the next day we went, and I was told, just say his name, people will know who he is. And the next day we went, parked the car, and just, walked. And I had a little Yale Y88 hat on.
Yeah, I remember the hat.
Right. And when, and I had it because I'm like, let this person at least know, there's some connection here, because I didn't know who he was. And so, and so other people in the encampments pointed out where he was. And I went over, and for some reason, when he saw me, he said, "Kim Clayton." And I said, "Oh my God," and this was a young man who was a year, behind me, your
Wow.
year, Kim, a year behind me in school. And then I just sat down on the ground, and we just started talking, just, not asking, how did this happen? How did you get here? Just sort of reconnecting the dots as to how we knew each other. And, and in that sort of the end of that visit, and I was probably there for about an hour. The three of us were there for about an hour. I asked him, what he wanted. And, he said, this had to have happened for a reason. And I want to somehow tell my story. And now, at this point, I am a business affairs consultant. That's really what I was doing. And I always pop in and out because something happens that I feel like if I can be of service, I'd like to be. So when he said that, I talked to my significant other, who's now my husband, and I said, "How do we do this? Let's." And I told him I will be back. I said, "I will be back tomorrow." And I talked to my now husband, and I said, "How do we? Let's film this. Let's tell his story." So we came back the next day, and interestingly, he was actually at a different location because of street sweeps. You have to move. So he wasn't even in the same location that he'd been in previously. And, and we found him, we hired a professional cameraman, and we went and found him. And then it was really a 21-day journey of talking to him, learning his story, his life story, and just reconnecting him back to really humanity, and learning of all the obstacles, that he had faced. And then as we tried, so at this point, my now husband and I were really a team, going out when we would do, sort of sit down and film, and then really learning how hard it was, and I thought, this is going to be easy. I'm going to jump in here. We're going to get him into housing, medical, addiction, help, mental, because whether or not you have mental issues, being on the street for 10 years, you have PTSD, you have,
That's right.
Things you have to deal with. And then also employment, because, he was 50, I don't know at that time, 53, 52, I guess. But, a vibrant person, and an intelligent person. And so, but the 3 weeks that it took to get him off the street, it really took, a fellow alum who was the chair of the LASA board stepped in. I had people trying to, help me get him into medical facilities. Everything was difficult and a battle. And it turned into an 18-month time period with complete devotion to get this person with a team of Yaleys. So this tells you how unsolved currently this problem is, and how counterintuitive so many of the programs, are, and the organizations that are helping, from the department of, the housing department to the social services to the mental and addiction health facilities to the hospitals. He had a spouse who, within 2 days of getting them off the street, had to go in for emergency open heart surgery, and just dealing with that with the hospitals. And then he had so many, we had an alum who is a physician, specializes in vision, who pointed out you have to get him, right, you have to get him to an eye doctor. And that alum stepped up and was paying for the appointments. And we literally saved, so one of his eye we could not save, but we saved, one of his other eye, and we got him back with his prior doctor, who said, had you come here, a month later, your glaucoma would have been, we couldn't do anything about it. So it was really like, and I will just say God, spirits, energy, whatever, that story by the CNN reporter, Dan Simon, came out that day, and that I was made aware of, because had we waited 1 month, his spouse would have inevitably died on the street with a heart condition, and he would have been blind, legally blind in both eyes. So, it was very difficult. And I have to, really stress that, not easy. And we still don't have people who are willing to give up some control and follow one person and have accountability and connectivity with all of these organizations that, frankly, are checking boxes and getting funding, but not following the whole patient. And for me, it was really, and I do this, which is how I get involved in things. It was really like, once I committed, I was going to follow through to the end. And that is even now, Sean is now managing his health, and he's had lifelong health issues, managing his health, his physical health, mental health, as many of us should do. He's in counseling just so he deals with whatever issues he went through, whatever issues, were in existence before. And he is now really an advocate, an independent advocate for the unhoused. So he just finished speaking on a panel with, a member of HUD nationally and others that was hosted by the Harvard, I think it's School of Design or Architectural School. So he just finished, that program. And so we're still getting footage and then really hoping to be able to get something out, even if not commercially, something out that will really show the wholeness of this problem. And, and we have everything on camera, from trying to get him into Section 8 housing, and dealing with, unfortunately, racial discrimination there, where, they have unhoused people who've gotten out of the addiction mental health facility that he was in, who'd recommended this place, but they were not going to, let him in. There was nothing that we could do. So just really showing how there are so many systemic problems, and there is a way, and how so many times the ball was dropped with him and could have been dropped as we were working with him. And I will tell you, many people did not appreciate me following up. And, but it was like, this is what I'm committed to, and we're going to do it to the end. So, it took 18 months to get him off the street. And now it's, more than 2 years. And we still, very much
still dealing with.
Right.
I know we haven't planned on talking about that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And that kind of ties in with some of the things that these bills that Congress is arguing about. Because I work with that system too, getting people housing, and the bureaucracy in these things is it's amazing. To get someone a basic apartment, it's amazing. Okay, let's stop, because I'll go into a tangent. Kim will know. Kim, you're here to talk about breast cancer and your journey in preventing breast cancer. So I know you've been talking a lot this morning about the homeless situation, and our prayers go out to Sean and his partner, and hopefully, and I look forward to that documentary. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in the prevention of breast cancer for yourself, and how you came to that conclusion to have the procedure that you did?
Yes. I'm happy to share my journey, and there are really two reasons why. And I'll tell you, ladies, I have about 6 slides that I'm going to try to click in at the right time, if I can make that work. So the first reason is that so many people are not aware of the BRCA, BRCA, the BRCA gene mutation. And I'm speaking specifically about Black women, and frankly about Black people in general, Black people of African descent. We aren't told about the gene. We aren't told about the higher rate of mutation in our community, or about the need to get tested. So that's number one. And then number two, I believe that doctors often make decisions or suggestions without really considering the whole person, or the effects of their suggestions on other aspects of the person's physical health, mental health, and frankly, quality of life. So my hope is that, by sharing this journey, other women, frankly, other people will feel empowered when it comes to their personal health decisions. So I'm going to try to get in a moment, try to get my first slide up. But in 2008, 13 years ago, I was diagnosed with a BRCA2 inconclusive gene mutation. Now, first, what I'd like to do is explain, with the help of the CDC, uh, I will need their help. I'd like to explain what the BRCA genes are and why mutations matter. I hope that you can see this. I'm not sure if
Yes.
you can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So for the first slide, BRCA1 and BRCA2 are two, genes that are important to fighting cancer. They're tumor suppressor genes. When they work normally, these genes help keep, breast, ovarian, and other types of cells from growing and dividing too rapidly or in an uncontrolled way. And sometimes a change or mutation occurs in the BRCA genes that prevent them from working normally. This raises a person's risk of breast cancer, ovarian, and other cancers.
Kim, can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
How were you diagnosed with that gene?
Let
Was
me
it through?
jump out of here.
Okay.
Okay. So I was diagnosed because a little backstory. I'm not sure what you're seeing on the screen here, but a little backstory is, my mom. First of all, I knew my family history. I'd always learned my family history of various cancers, etc. And when my mom was 50, she had breast cancer, and had a mastectomy on the left side. And then at 60, she had non-metastasized, which means not as a result of the prior, and independent cancer on, the right side. And then at 63 or 62, she had colon cancer. I think 63. And at that point, she and my dad were in Chicago. I was out in Los Angeles. No kids at the time, but working. And so I said, going back and forth was very difficult. I said, come out, and go to UCLA, which was near me. I lived in Westwood, and let's do this together, because I can't, continue to run, back and forth. I guess I could have, but me thinking work and, so my doctors were at UCLA, and she went through, her treatment and at UCLA, eventually her breast, non-metastasized breast, non-metastasized colon, and then non-metastasized pancreatic. And unfortunately, when she was 65, the pancreatic, that was in 2000, took her life, and she transitioned. But my doctors were aware of this. And so, I had been, like she had been. I had been for over a decade plus dealing with fibrocystic breasts, which is sort of painful, and they're cysts and large, and getting mammograms every year. But in addition to the mammograms, I was having to get, ultrasounds and MRIs, which is putting, chemicals in like twice a year. So, my doctor said, I think you should go to the Revlon Breast Center, which was at UCLA, and just, speak with one of the oncologists there. And I ended up, over the course of, good Lord, probably, 6-7 years, something like that, I ended up going there regularly, and they kept asking, are you going to have children first? And I said, I think so. Didn't know why she was asking me this. And then when I had my kids, they kept asking, are you going to have more kids? And, finally, I think my kids were 5. And I was like, and I had twins. I was like, yeah, I think I'm sort of done. And then when I said that, she said, I'd like you to do some genetic testing. And so that's what triggered me having the genetic testing.
Okay.
And, as we'll talk about this, and I go through this, and I'll go through a little quicker because we've done some of the things I was going to show there are certain risk factors that you should have the genetic testing if, in fact, you meet some of those risk factors. So I'm going to jump back. Does that answer your question?
That's fine. Yes, it does. Okay. Yes. I just wanted people to know that. It's important to know your medical history. That's very important.
Exactly.
Your family history.
Your family history. So know about your parents, know about your aunts and uncles, know about your grandparents, and really know their family history. And, when you're giving that history at the doctor's, which I'd given, for years, I think I, no longer give an extensive history anymore. But, I was always curious and very close to my mom in sort of hearing, what the history was. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to jump back to sharing
Okay.
and go to, I think I may be in there already. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think you're sharing now.
I am sharing. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
all
What
women,
are the odds?
do you
Mm-hmm.
see this, late? All
Yes.
women have the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, but only some women have mutations in those genes. So 1 in 500 women in the US have a mutation of either the BRCA1 or BRCA2. And if your mother or father have the mutation, you have a 50% chance of having the mutation. Now, I had no idea whether my mom had passed away, whether or not she had that mutation, just sort of in following my journey. But why this matters is that 50% of the women with this mutation will get breast cancer, by the time they're 70. And that's as opposed to 7% of the general population, and 30% of women who have the gene will get ovarian cancer, which is a very fast acting and lethal cancer by the time they're 70. And that's compared to 1% of the general population. Now, some people have a higher risk for the BRCA gene mutation than others. And as we were saying, that's why knowing your family history is incredibly important. And you can look through sort of some of the family history factors. For me, I had an aunt who had passed away in her early 30s of ovarian cancer before I was born. But I knew that I'd heard the story from my mom and knew that she went into the hospital not knowing what was wrong, and she never came out, because that cancer had taken her so quickly. And then I also had a relative, which was my mom, who had had cancer in both breasts that were non-metastasized over a 10-year period. Something else, and that they didn't know, because I'm a bit of a mutt, was, did I have Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry? And so that is also one of the factors. So
Mm-hmm.
let me.
Yeah, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is a congresswoman in Florida, she's Jewish descent, and she had that cancer.
Right.
It was a history in her family of having that.
And I think that, if you have those factors, there's going to be a recommendation that you get this BRCA testing done. Now, note, what was missing from that list was Black people of African descent. And the fact that they're missing from, and I got this from current CDC guidelines. The fact that they're missing with regard, to this gene mutation was surprising to me, because after I was diagnosed with the BRCA2 inconclusive gene mutation, I was asked to participate in a nationwide study. And I learned 5 years later, so now this is 2013, after following up with that study, that this gene mutation was not only prevalent in those with Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, which, by the way, I do not have, but also in Black people of African descent. And yet that's still not showing up, 8 years, 2013, what is that, 8 years after,
8 years.
I found out in this study that it was prevalent. So once you're diagnosed with a BRCA gene mutation, or if you have a family history, of breast cancer, per CDC guidelines, you have a higher risk of breast cancer, and you should talk to your doctor about ways of reducing your risks. So this slide, there are really two ways of reducing, and I hope you guys can see the slide. One is surgical, to reduce your risk of breast cancer. The other is taking anti-estrogens or other medications that block or decrease estrogen in your body. The surgical is it's twofold. It's a prophylactic mastectomy, which is removal of the breast tissue, and it's a prophylactic salpingo-oophorectomy, and that's removal of the ovaries and the fallopian tubes. So,
Tim, I have a quick question. I noticed in your slide there was a correlation between ovarian and breast cancer. What about other cancers like cervical cancers? What is the would that prompt a person to say, maybe I need to test the BRCA gene?
Yeah, I think so, because the reality is if you have this BRCA mutation and it's therefore not, there's a slide that I have and I really want to go back to because I want to get it correctly. So if you it is a tumor suppressor gene, BRCA1 and BRCA2. So if you have the mutation, that suppressor gene is not working properly, and so your cells are dividing too rapidly or in an uncontrolled way, so it's not suppressing. So yes, it's breast cancer that this BRCA gene affects, and that affects men and women. It's ovarian cancer that this gene affects, but it's also other types of cancer cells. My mom had, and my mom was not tested, but I have to believe this gene came from my mother, because UCLA was really like, this woman doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, and into her entire life, and yet she keeps getting cancer. Her third cancer was colon cancer. That showed up and appeared, and why, and I, this is a different story, but I get colonoscopies, it was like every couple of years. Now it's every 3 years. And then she got the pancreatic. So if you have any cancer genes, in my opinion, and you are African-American, ask about the BRCA genetic testing.
It's funny you mentioned that, because my late father had myelofibrosis, which is a blood cancer. And interestingly enough, not many Black people had it. He had it for 20 years. And that's something, I'm glad you're mentioning this, because I know myself personally, I will probably need to be tested, because it never appeared anywhere in the family, but he had it, and what took him out was pneumonia, but he was able to maintain it for 20. I mean, that's a long time to have that type of cancer, but it's a blood cancer. It's like it's leukemia. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. So thank you.
Because it's really right. The suppressor is not working. So it is something. So after I was diagnosed, I was told, of those two options, the surgical and then the medications, that I should have the surgeries. And now this is when things, got interesting. My doctor suggested that I immediately have my ovaries removed, and then down the road, it was really by the age of 45. There was the 3-year window. I was 42 then. Down the road, that I have my breast tissue removed. Were I to do that, within weeks, I would have plunged into menopause. Now I'm going to share something from, and I was not perimenopausal. I was, but I would literally plunge into menopause. So I'm going to share something from the Mayo Clinic. So that is, I'm going to go to the next slide. There are 4 causes of menopause: chemotherapy, radiation, primary ovarian insufficiency, which is just a natural insufficiency, and a natural decline, and also surgery that removes your ovaries. So, according to the Mayo Clinic, your ovaries produce hormones, including estrogen and progesterone, that regulate your menstrual cycle. Surgery to remove your ovaries causes immediate menopause. Now, according to the Mayo Clinic, this can lead to certain complications that are quite serious: cardiovascular disease, heart and blood vessel disease, osteoporosis, urinary incontinence, sexual, it says function, but it's really sexual dysfunction, and weight gain. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Oh, Kim went away. She went away.
She'll come right
hopefully
back.
She'll come back. This is first of all, you all, for those of you all who are tuned in, welcome to K&K. She said that the Wi-Fi connection where she is really bad, but just what she shared with us,
my goodness,
was, I need to get tested for that BRCA. And I'm curious to know, and hopefully we'll have a doctor on here in a couple weeks. Does insurance cover that? Right. Because insurance is, as you know, Kay, and Kim is coming back.
I have no idea what just happened. I didn't even click a button. I don't know what happened. Hello, ladies. So
can we ask one more? Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When you're doing that testing, Does insurance cover that?
Yes. If
Thank
you,
you.
and this is the issue though. You have to have one of the risk factors for it to cover. So that's why, to the extent that we can get this out there, I do not understand. And and really being asked to speak with you, I'm going to go back to the facility that did my testing and the doctor, because I don't understand why the results that I learned of 8 years ago are not showing up in the CDC guidelines. So if because just being of Ashkenazi Jewish descent is a reason to get tested. Black babies are tested in the hospital for sickle cell because we know that that's a trait, from those of African descent. This should be the same way without having the relative with the ovarian,
Right,
without having
right,
the two breasts. So for
right.
me, because there were other factors, it was covered under my insurance. But that is really, and Kim, I know you're political and you get involved with this. This is really something that needs to be, because if you don't have those factors, and for instance, Kay, with your father, they may say, well, we're not going to do this testing, but it should be, because literally 5 years I went back and said, so what are the results? Because there was no thought that this affected, Black women of African descent, Black people of African, and they said it was shocking, but this inconclusive mutation that I had, this was found in Black women, like
Wow.
prevalent in Black women. And I'm like, we're not talking about this, and unfortunately I had, a cousin uh, subsequent thereto who had breast cancer, chose a lumpectomy. The breast cancer ended up taking, her life. Had she had that testing and sort of an awareness, it would have been, okay, you know what? A lumpectomy is not going to save me. I need to have the mastectomy, or I need to go on, these anti-estrogens. So it should be covered if there is a risk factor that's one of the stated, or if you have a history, it should be covered. But if you're just a person of African descent, at this point, I don't believe that it's covered. And that's a conversation
And
you have with your doctor.
and we want to stress during we're none of us are doctors. You really should be in contact with your doctor. And the other lesson in this is, and I remember seeing Dr. Oz on Oprah and saying this, you really have to be an advocate for your health, especially as African American women. Kim, I don't want to tell all your business, but you did put on Facebook something about your history with doctors and how trying to find a good OBGYN, I believe when you were pregnant with your boys. And Black women have a higher rate of dying during natural childbirth.
That's right.
And so we really have to be our own advocates for pushing for these tests, making sure that insurance covers them, and making sure, doctors say, hey, did you do this? Did you do this? I went to the doctor recently, and the woman kept stressing to me, you're past having a child. You need to have a hysterectomy. And I'm like, slow down. I know how old I am.
Wait. Why would
Slow
she?
down.
I have to ask the question. Why would she even recommend that? Just because you're a certain age? That's ridiculous.
No, because I was having fibroids.
Okay.
Because I had fibroids. But my whole thing is slow down. Let me do my own research, find out what I need to do, and don't stop telling me how old I am. I see my birth certificate. But go on, Kim. But so be an advocate.
I think
be
Kim,
your own healthcare advocate.
right. And I think, Kim, what you're saying, I'm done with my slides now. We'll just sort of finish my journey. But what you're saying is exactly what I'm going to talk about right now, is the importance of being your own advocate. At that time, I was 42 years old, and I was pretty terrified. The other slide that talked about the conditions, osteoporosis, sexual dysfunction, cardiovascular disease. So those are all the things that, I was being told, have these out right now, and go into full-fledged menopause from not even considering, no night sweats, regular cycle. However, my doctor, whose goal was just saving my life, was completely unconcerned. At this point, I began to do my own research, and I learned about bioidentical hormones. And you mentioned Oprah. I learned from Suzanne Summers, who was on an episode of Oprah, if you remember this episode back then. So I learned about these bioidentical hormones. And I learned that taking such hormones, though, was ill-advised if you had breast tissue, as they could increase the risk of breast cancer. So I then went back to my doctor with a question. And that was there a reason that I had to have the ovaries removed before the breast tissue? And she said, no. I then went and met with a doctor who specialized in bioidentical, hormones. I actually went, by the way, to Suzanne Summers' doctor. Yes, I did. I was like, I live in California. So I went there. And after, and this is really, this took a lot of my, just like Sean, this took up a lot of my time dealing, with my own health issues. And after this meeting, though, I was armed with knowledge that I could stave off, and hear this, menopause indefinitely. I went back to the doctor who frankly hadn't even considered, what removing the ovaries would do to me. Because frankly, Western medical practitioners, as a Western medical practitioner, that wasn't her concern. At this meeting, I agreed to have the bilateral mastectomy. And, I have to say, it was probably one of the best decisions that I'd made, because like I told you, ladies, I had been dealing with, I at this point have babies, who are in kindergarten and first grade. And I am dealing with MRIs and scares and, sort of constant. And those MRIs were, at least twice a year, which is terrible. So, but however, prior to having the surgery, I learned that I could have the reconstructive surgery during the same procedure. So by having the breast tissue removed by the oncologist and the concurrent reconstructive by a plastic surgeon, frankly, I believe that I avoided the inherent emotional trauma, that people experience when th're having a mastectomy. And that's something really I would say to consider for people who are like, I don't want to lose my breasts. I'm going to have a lumpectomy. Is take the time, talk to your oncologist, get a referral for a plastic surgeon. My referral actually came from my oncologist to the plastic surgeon. And so don't worry about that. If you have to have it, there is a way. I learned, to have that done concurrently. So now with my doctor's approval, I waited 3 years before having the oophorectomy, and 45 was her deadline. I waited until 45. But importantly, in that interim period, I met with bioidentical hormone specialists so that within a day of returning home from the bilateral oophorectomy, which I will say that procedure was actually incredibly, unlike the mastectomy, incredibly emotional for me. But within a day, I was on bioidentical hormones. And at that point, there was minimal, if not zero, risk of me getting breast cancer. And 10 years later, I will tell you at 55, I have completely, avoided menopause. Thank you, Jesus.
And my menopause story has been very minimal, but can we just hate on Kim just for a minute? Okay. For avoiding menopause. Went out again.
She'll come back.
Wow. That in itself is enough to just get the surgery to avoid menopause.
Well, I've been premenopausal, so still going through it. And thankfully, we'll have to definitely. I'm hoping Kim will come back, but talk about that, because that's a conversation we need, to have. She's back.
Right.
I keep clicking the wrong button. I apologize.
We were just hating on you for a little bit. Kim isn't going through menopause that much, but we just hating on you a minute for not going through menopause. So we just had to hate.
This is a continuing journey. This is a continuing journey because, I went on bioidenticals and, doing great. And I always had fibroids, Kim, as well. And then, my bioidentical hormone specialist and my regular physician and my bioidentical hormones and my gynecologist, I keep them all. And they were like, oh, well, we should switch you out of this and switch you to this. And they made changes, from the bioidentical to a more traditional estrogen patch. So the bioidentical is estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, just so you know. And so they
Okay.
switched the estrogen, and the rationale was that by lowering that, these fibroids would reduce in size. One person thought that, right? So I went through this and I said, I'm not feeling, 100% myself. And then I talked to the other doctors and they're like, well, first of all, with my ultrasound, your fibroids are getting smaller naturally. There was no reason for you to have switched. So I had to, a week ago, go back and say, you need to put me back on my bioidentical hormones. And so this process of self-advocating is an ongoing, because doctors don't
Okay.
remember. You remember why
Yep.
you made
Right.
decisions. You remember
Right.
what you went through, but they don't. You're a patient coming in, they're like, oh, you're 55. Let's put you off this and just give you this patch. And that patch for 6 months was not good. And so I had to
Wow.
switch back to the original. And there was zero reason that they had switched me other than they forgot, what they were doing and my history. So, I hope that in sort of talking about this, that there are the takeaway is sort of twofold. One, it's important for Black people of African descent with a family history of breast cancer or a personal history of breast cancer, or simply by virtue of being a Black person of African descent,
Hmm.
that you proactively ask, your doctor about being checked for this BRCA gene mutation. That's number one. And then number two, Kim, what you were saying is, I hope that, when presented with life-changing or potentially, life-saving medical conditions or procedures, that people take the time to really understand the risks and benefits of the recommendations made by their doctors. I hope
Right.
that people listen carefully to what their doctor recommends, but then will stop and consider the long-term implications of these suggestions, because oftentimes doctors are not considering the whole person when making the recommendations. Therefore, bottom line, we have to be proactive about self-advocating when it comes to our health.
Yes. Be an advocate for your own health. Be an advocate for your own health. That's
Yes,
basically it.
exactly.
You
How has
have to be.
Kim? I want to ask you, how has your journey affected the relationship with your spouse? Because I'm sure um, what you've gone through hopefully has strengthened the relationship.
Well, so my spouse, who I married in 1995, we actually separated at the time that I got the diagnosis. So, when we're still friends, we're co-parents. It's a wonderful
Hmm.
person, but our relationship was not, as a couple, the most positive. Best friend, but not the most positive. So I really went through that, you know, um, as a single person with two kids, sort of going through the procedure, making the decision about, the ovaries 3 years later. I did not have a significant other. I was too busy raising kids, frankly. And I think at that point I had actually stopped working, taken a break, because there's only so many things that one human being can do at one time. So, I went through that journey completely on my own, that three,
Wow.
4 year journey. But then, and I will tell you, we're talking candidly, I'll tell you something a little interesting. So I love kids, right? And I wanted to have, like, give me 5 kids, as many kids as you want. When I had that surgery at 45 that removed my ovaries, there is a mind-body connection, because at that point I had no desire to have any more kids, and it was the strangest thing. And then, after I'd had that surgery, the second surgery, and life had calmed down a bit at 45, I actually went into, I actually started dating. Again, and I think, at least a couple, maybe 3 of those relationships probably ended because the men wanted more children,
Mm-hmm.
but my current spouse, so we actually went to college together. He was a year ahead of me at Yale, even though he was younger than me, because he's a genius and he started at 16. But
Ah,
but but we've been together for 3 years, as a couple, and married since January. He didn't go through the journey, and I will be honest with you, until I put together this little presentation, I don't even think he really understood the journey that I went through, because it's not something that I talk about, at all. But, Kim, when we had sort of reached out about this and I was, putting together what I wanted to share, I think he was like, wow, girl, you are one tough lady.
He wanted to marry you all over again.
because first of all, I have this necklace. I don't know if you can see it. It says never look back.
Oh,
It's
wow.
my mom gave me the first necklace before she passed away in 2000. And then somehow, I don't know how I lost it when my significant other, now spouse, and I got back together. So then he had one made for me. But,
Oh,
I don't dwell on the past, so this is a journey that I went through. It's in my back of my head. When doctors try to say and do things, yes, I understand and I have to be proactive, but it's not something that I dwell on. So it's not something that I had, fully, told him, about. So,
that's,
yeah.
you are one tough chick. You are
And I,
one tough chick.
and I have to tell you, he has 3 children, adult children. One just
Mhm.
turned 30, one is 25, one is 21. He didn't want any more kids. And mine are 19, going to be 20, my twins.
Mhm.
So I have my 5 children now.
You do have your
There you
5
go.
children.
There you
I
go.
have, other
Do
than my
have
niece
your
and my
5
nephew, and
children.
I've had so many kids in my life, seriously. But I have more than enough young adults to, hopefully continue to nurture. So,
Well,
yeah.
Kim, this
Yeah.
has been amazing. I have learned, a lot. I have some things. I'm going to play this back. I wasn't able to take notes because I was watching the live feeds. But this has been a learning experience, and you have helped. I know you've helped Kay and I.
Absolutely.
You're going to help when people watch this. That's really going to help a lot of people because a lot of this I didn't know. I knew somewhat because I don't know if you know Ray. What's her name? Ray Schuyler, who we're trying to get on the show. She's Good Enough Mother. I believe she had the same surgery you did because in her case, both her mother and father had breast cancer.
Right.
And so the chances of her getting breast cancer were very high.
Uh-huh.
And every year she was having these biopsies. And so she had, I believe, the same procedure and reduced her chances of getting breast cancer by 5%.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So but as we say, talk to your doctor. It is your decision. And this surgery is not for everyone. Kim gave the options. I would say watch this again, take notes, and talk to your doctor about that. Anything else you want to share, Kim, before we let you go?
Well, I just want to share sort of briefly, and we're talking about breast cancer, but with this gene again, the cancer can be anywhere because it's a cancer suppressor, sort of gene. I had to years later get my
Thyroid.
thyroid taken out.
That's big.
So
Yeah.
I have to be on top of my colonoscopies. I have to be on top of my physicals. Knowing that I have this gene. Yes, I've solved this. This is out. But it is something that we have to really, and don't be afraid. Be proactive. About, and then every time you hear something, your doctor says this is really think about, okay, how does this affect my life and my lifestyle? And what are the other options? And take your time, before jumping into sort of a decision would be my suggestion. And I love what you ladies are doing. I'm so proud of you. And just thank you for having me here.
Well, thank
And
you
Kim,
so much, Kim.
we're gonna want you to come back definitely for Women's History Month. So as I said to you in the green room, we are all divas, and for those who don't know what diva stands for, determined, intelligent, vivacious, and accomplished. And that is truly who you are, my dear. Another
Yeah.
Shiro. We get all Shiros on this broadcast, so you're my new
Yeah.
Shiro.
Thank you.
And Kim doesn't know it, but she's going to be helping me when I get out to Hollywood and get in a movie or 2 or 3.
I
So
will have your back,
be
young lady.
ready.
You know that.
Just be
Anything.
ready. Thank
That's
you.
me. So yes, I will
Thank
be
you.
there.
Well, thank you, Kim. Enjoy that California weather.
Yes.
And God bless you. And we will be in contact.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye,
Have a
sweetie.
great
Take
day. Have a
care.
great day. That
Bye.
was
Oh my
awesome.
God.
That was
Oh,
awesome. That's how we
yeah.
HF people do it. Home with Fussball. Go Vikings. Go Vikings. Even though I hated high
That
school. The only
now
part
see, there
about high
you
school that
go.
huh?
There you go. Now see,
No,
uh,
I really
you
did.
know,
Really
we
did.
gonna wait a minute before you even go there. Here's the nugget that I posted this morning because this
Okay.
is it. The
Okay.
nugget is the words you speak are powerful, especially the words you
Mm-hmm.
speak to yourself. So,
Right.
with that being
Yeah.
said, Kim, high school was as your other Kim said is part. Don't dwell on that. It
Yeah.
may
No, I don't dwell on
it
it. I went to therapy about it. Honestly.
did you
I went to
really?
therapy
Wow.
about it. Oh yes, because we went to a school. I came from a very small. We weren't supposed to be talking about that. I came from a very small grade school. Went to grade school in Melrose Park, small Lutheran school. There were 28 of us that graduated in the class of 8th grade. So then my parents
Okay.
decided to move on up like the Jeffersons,
All
and we
right.
moved to the Flossmoor
we
area.
we we
And
we we have a
we went to
parallel. We have a
yeah. So
parallel because
we
I
so
went.
we
Go
yeah
ahead,
we
babe.
went from 300 students to 4,000.
Okay.
And the percentage when Kim and I went, I believe it was 2% black.
Okay.
We had two campuses, and you had to walk between classes 10 minutes
Hmm.
in between classes.
Hmm.
It
We
was traumatic. I
we
went to
we should
therapy about it.
we should. I remember. I went to a small Catholic grammar school. Was under
Yeah,
30. Then I went to what Whitney Young. Whitney Young was a huge
yeah,
school.
yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
it. One thing about it, what happens in your high school, it definitely has those formative years, but
yeah.
just know that now that you are about to be a upcoming Tony Award, Academy Award, Emmy Award winning actress, the lessons that you've learned there will help you continue to be the best that you can be. So just
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. We are going to have to go. We usually get candid at this moment in the conversation. I just want to give a shout out if I can. And I know I've been political this episode. You all know how I am about politics. I want to give a shout out to the progressive wing of the Democratic Party who represents us in Congress. They are trying to get two bills passed, mostly the infrastructure bill, and there's another bill, the name escapes me. What these people are doing is very important. Many people go to Washington, say they're going to do A, B, C, and D, and just do a little. What these people, mainly the squad, are doing, which consists of AOC, consists of the young lady who was the Muslim young lady,
In
Ilar
Minnesota.
Oman,
In
I
Minnesota.
believe.
In
They are
Minnesota.
saying for Minnesota, what they are saying is, look, we have the money to actually change people's lives. For years, we have been saying we're going to get what do we hear every political cycle? We're going to do something about education. We're going to do something about the roads. What these people are saying is we need to stop giving it lip service. If you can propose that something is going to cost $2 or $3 trillion, that means there is money for it. And if people ever need help, free community college, okay, Medicare does not cover, and I learned this from the work that I do, does not cover hearing aids. Some of it does not cover glasses for seniors. Yes. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was talking about that this morning, where she knows seniors that are not able to get eyeglasses. I
That's
have a lady that
ridiculous.
I was trying to help that she would have to come out, and she is hard of hearing. She would have to come out of her pocket for a hearing aid, which is not cheap. In fact, my mother has a hearing aid and had to come out of pocket for it, which was about $700 to $1,000 each ear. So what the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is saying is, look, many of you all, that is to include Joe Biden, have been in office for 30 years, whatever years, and have done nothing to help really, really poor people. Well, that stops now. We're going to stop recycling this. And we are actually going to help people. And I am so proud because usually everybody, well, let's get in the room, Nancy Pelosi, let's just get in the room and we're going to just no, we're not doing that. We're not doing it this time. We are actually going to go back to our constituents and say, look, here's some money for some housing, as Kim was talking about earlier. Here's some money. It took her 18 months to get that gentleman out. That's ridiculous. If somebody wants a house, a place to live, they should be able to get a place to live. We're finding it for all these the Afghan people who I understand, for all these Afghan people that are coming. So we got the money. The money is not the issue. So I applaud them.
It's a bureaucrat.
Yes, and it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So let's make America great again. Sorry. Without the evil person who was formerly in the office.
And on that note, ladies and
gentlemen, we are going to have a great show. We know that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And if you go on K&K's page, you will see information about that. We are going to have a young lady that does a walk every year in her home state about domestic violence awareness, and she will be with us next week. And we are excited to talk about this. Many of you know the young lady that was missing, was dealing with domestic, Brandy, I believe is her name, perhaps. And she, if you go look on this tape, she was being, it was a domestic violence situation. And they're really questioning how the police are handling that. And that is a whole nother issue as far as domestic violence that even I have had to deal with on a personal level. So
both of us have. So
yep. And so we'll be talking about that next week.
So until next week, ladies and gents, we're still in the global pandemic. Wear that damn mask. If you're not vaccinated, if you choose not to get vaccinated, I should say, wear the damn mask. Still wear the mask. Wash your hands. Practice physical distancing if you can. And, before I let go, I want to send prayers out to Illinois State Troopers Gerald Mason, who was killed yesterday on the Dan Ryan Expressway here in Chicago. Yes. And it happened to be my last name. When I read that, I was like, oh my goodness. So the family, to his mom, Linda Mason, and to the Mason family, we send our prayers to you, because that's something that we definitely need to get stopped. That definitely needs to stop. These damn shootings on these expressways here in Chicago. So
the gun violence in Chicago is really something. So with that being said, we're going to end on a positive note. Have a wonderful day. Have a blessed day. May God bless you. Continue to pray, praise, and push. I'm Kim Coleman, Sister Girl Speaks. Bye, Kim Clayton. I see you in the audience. You guys, I got to go to a workshop. So I will see you all, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Bye.